Hello everyone, welcome back. As you guys can see from the title, today we're doing swatches of this beautiful palette. I am so excited because of two reasons. One, this is a color story that I am loving from NATASHA DENONA. And the fact that this is my very first eyeshadow palette I've purchased all year. It is June, you guys. This is the longest I've ever gone without buying an eyeshadow palette since I've started my YouTube channel. And that is amazing. That means I can do it if I want to. But that's not why we're here. We're here today to do a swatch party of this and to compare it to a few palettes that I do have in my collection. I did my best to try to choose palettes that are still available on the market. So if you are interested in getting the vibe and not necessarily buying this palette, you can go ahead and do that. So if you're interested to see what colors we have and we're swatching today, stay tuned. Okay, a little bit of background on this palette. This is obviously called the Yucca palette. This is what it looks like right here. It has that velvety suede kind of feel to it that other palettes is not the shiny one that some of the palettes have. It's a really nice palette. I do like it. I love the outside of it. It does represent what's in here. It reminds me of a safari. I don't know. It seems like about 3 different brands came out with color stories that look like this. And there are ones that I have or that are out that I did not purchase, so I could not compare them to it, but you guys can get the vibe out of this and see if you would want to be interested in those other palettes. So this palette is $69. It is currently available at Sephora and will be available at Ulta if it hasn't been done already. Use your points for it. You guys know NATASHA DENONA just started this whole point system on her website. I've always shopped on her specific website. One, because shipping is ridiculously fast. 2, I have never once received anything broken, and I'd rather trust her than Ulta or Sephora, knowing that I have gotten things broken in the past from those two. So I just go ahead and get it from her website. It's not a big deal to me. I actually like it. Now, I always say this every time I do one of these videos. Wait till Black Friday. She has amazing sales on Black Friday where you could probably get this palette and another palette for the price of one. So if you are not in a rush to get this palette for whatever reason, wait for that. She has really, really good sales all the time on her website. So I am always encouraging those that would want to buy from her website to do so. I think it's great and I've never had an issue once. So this is the palette right here, you guys. It's your typical mid-size palette that she has. You're getting 5 metallic-y, shimmery type of shadows. Besides your metallic and your duochromes, you're getting duochromes, like shifty shades in here, toppers, metallics. You are getting 2 cream to powders in this palette specifically. You are getting mattes and you are getting, so there's a little bit of different finishes throughout. Typically, if you do get a NATASHA DENONA palette, this is what you're typically going to get. You're going to get different finishes unless she specifically says this is an all matte palette, all metallic, so on and so forth. So that is no surprise to me considering I already own quite a few of her palettes and I do enjoy them. The creamy mattes or the cream to powders, I have no problems with as long as you know how to work with them. I think you should, but I know some people have a harder time because of the way that their eyes are structured. I get it. So if that is something that deters you, maybe you don't want to get this palette, but I do like her cream to powder formula specifically, not necessarily other brands, but hers I do. So now that I've gotten you basically the basis of this palette, let's get into swatching this palette, shall we? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down in columns instead of going across, just so we could get a different feel for the palette, because I haven't seen any other video, but I am assuming that most people are going across and I want to go down just to give you, sometimes that gives you a different perspective on the palette and how you can mix and match the shades. right, you guys, so here is what we're working with. Whenever I swatch these palettes, I do a very, very light pressure on these shadows because I want to see if I were to go in with a light hand with a brush, how well these would show up. So you guys can see that they do show up. This one right here, which is your cream to powder up here, had a little bit of a hard time. This one right here, as you could see, had a little bit of a hard time. It still shows up, but because of their formulation or maybe their color itself, you could see that they're not going to be as impactful as some other shadows. So I can see already, these are beautiful. These metallic-y shades are beautiful. Very nice texture. They feel exactly like a NATASHA Denona shadow when it, if you ever tried them, if you ever played around with them. And this color story just has won me over. I really, really like it a lot. It's very, very beautiful. You guys could see there what it looks like. So now we're going to go ahead and compare these one by one individual to see if we could find similar shades in our collection. Now, with this said, I'm not here looking exactly dupe for dupe. I never do dupes. I am always duping the vibe of a palette. That's what I always do, because nowadays you can find anything in your collection that can match something that's out in the market. I could have found this palette over and over and over, pulling out my singles, pulling out different shadows. I just want to see overall if palettes have the same vibe, or you can get away with whatever shade you're really interested in if you can still, if you have them in your collection in a different palette. So that's what I'm going to do today. And let's get into it. So the first palette that came to mind was the Juvia's Place Nomad palette. This is a palette that's very popular, that had a lot of hype going around it and still may have a good following of it. So I wanted to see if maybe if you had this palette, is this something that you necessarily could skip out on and not have to really spend the $69 on. So I'm telling you off the bat, I am not here to compare formulas. As you guys know, NATASHA Denona is 100 times better than Juvia's Place, but there may be some of us that just can't afford this palette, and you may be already okay with this palette here. So first shade that I already see that we could possibly dupe is this shade right here in Fushi. So here's Fushi. This is a cream to powder. So it's going to be a little bit creamier, but that is a beautiful shade. And I actually want to dupe this one. Nope, see, this is a little bit more yellow. This one's obviously going to be a little bit more orange, but if you mix both of those two, you could possibly get that shade. So if you don't mind mixing and matching, you know, you might be able to find something similar to that. While we have that orange one here from the Nomad palette, let's go with this shade right here in I cannot say these names. IXIA. I don't know why we can't just pick names that we can all pronounce. These are very similar. It's just that this one's a little bit more white base. This definitely has more brown to it, but that's a similar shade right there. We have this shadow right here, which is one of my favorites from the Nomad palette. It is a beautiful poopy kind of green. I'm going to go with this one in Asaya. See, this is more green base, definitely. This has a lot more brown to it. This shade right here in the Nomad, and I'm going to go with this one in Calathea, I think that's how you say it. See, this one's a cream to powder, so it's a different texture, and it comes out to be a lot lighter. You guys can see that. Now, the only shimmer shade in this palette is more brown based than anything in here. I don't see anything exactly the same in here as far as the shimmer shades. So as you guys can see, these palettes have a similar vibe. Between both of them, they have a similar vibe. So if you're okay with this one, you may be skipping out on that one. Now, this one has like that purple shade. That's the only color you're missing here, but you could pull it out from a different palette if you want. So this is the first comparison that we have. So here's our second comparison. Now, when I thought of this palette, I automatically thought of the BH Cosmetics Avocado Toast. And as you guys can clearly see, they're not really the same vibes, but I did want to still point this out because if you are okay with this color story, you may not want this one. The NATASHA Denona is a lot more grungier, more deeper shades, more muted. This one's a lot brighter in its green shade. So there's nothing really here to compare, honestly. They're very different, but I did want to bring this out just in case it crossed your mind, this is what they would both look like. Here's another Juvia's Place color story. I think this one's still available as well. This is the Tri palette. This one has that grungy, deeper orangey safari kind of shadows in here. So let's see what we can come up with, because I can already see this shadow right here, which is that lime green. Compare it to this lime green over here. Ooh, you guys, they look identical to me. They really do look identical. So if you already have the Tri palette and that's what's grabbing your eyeballs, I just say stick with the Tri one. And to be honest with you, the Juvia's Place is a little bit more pigmented than the NATASHA DENONA formula is. Let's go with this orangey shade right here. And then this orangey shade over here. That's more brown base. Let's try this shadow right here. Okay, that's a little bit more, it's still yellow base, as you guys can see, but it's there. It's from the Juvia's Place, and these two are from the NATASHA DENONA palette. What else do we have? This shadow right here, which is another one of my favorites. It's like that brown, green, poopy shade. Let's go with Valley, maybe. Ooh, close, but no cigar. This one's definitely a lot more warmer tone, the one from NATASHA DENONA. And obviously, let's try this one, this shade right here, this green one. See, that's still too light of a shadow. That might be it for that one, you guys. And then we have this one from Juvia's Place. Ooh, maybe Willow. Oh, that's similar. Just that Willow, I feel like, has a little bit more blue to it than green. Not bad. What about this one? The cream to powder might be really light. Yeah, that's going to be really light. And again, this shimmer shade right here, it's very, very bronzy and warm compared to the rest in here. This is more yellow, more green. This one's a lot more gold. This one has red to it. It's a duochrome. And then this one has purple. So I don't think that would match any of these. So here's another palette that if you have this one with the Nomad palette, you might have enough where you want to skip out on this one. Okay, a lot of you wanted me to compare it to the Menagerie Killer Purr palette. This is the new version. This is the old version. The new version only has a few swaps out of it, but it could be very comparable. So as I'm looking at these, I think what I'm going to do is just compare it to the new one, because you can't get the old one anymore. And from what I see, this one that they swapped out, as you guys can see here, could be a dupe for this shade Valley. And what else? Antelope with Flax. Oh, goodness. Yeah. I feel like the older version may have been closer, but I'm going to do the new version because you can't get the older version, and it's not fair if you don't have the old version. What do we have here? This shade is way too yellow. I can already tell just by looking at it. This one's very deep in orange. I could tell already. No. Antelope, no. Maybe this one? Let's see. We have this green. Let's try a few of these greens, shall we? Oh, that might be it. We didn't have to go that far. Look at that. So the shade in the Killer Purr, and then this one's from the NATASHA DENONA. Okay, so we have one. Pride is way too cool tone, even though let's try it with this one. So let's do Pride and then Flax over here. Not bad. This one's a little bit deeper, but not bad. Okay. 2 for 2, guys. 2 for 2. This purple, there isn't any. This color, Lioness. Ooh. That's a beautiful duochrome. I don't think it's the same as this one. No, this one's a lot more green, as you guys can see right there. And then if I were to do this one, it's very pink based. What about this one? Nope. Still, this is the Killer Purr. These three are Natasha Denona. And might as well do the last one. Actually, that one might be the one. Nope, it's still too sheer compared to that one. While we're here, let's grab the shade Main and swap it right next to this shadow right here, which is this one right here. This is very, very pink. Can you tell? Like, that's very, very pink compared to the one from the Natasha Denona. So they're not dupes. And then the last one is this one in Watering Hole from the Killer Purr. And then this is Willow. It's different. This one's definitely more blue based. This one's a lot more green. So that is not it. So here you go, you guys. So we definitely have these. But then as far as everything else, not really. And I feel like the older version may have gone better, but it's not available. So there's no point of really me comparing it. But if you do have the old one, I would say that I think you would be satisfied with a lot of the shades as being very similar. All right, you guys, I actually am bringing out the Zendo palette, not necessarily for this side, but more for this side over here, especially this color right here in Llama. A lot of you had asked me to compare it to this shadow right here, so we're going to do that right about now and see the difference. And I can already tell there's a big difference. You see, this one's from the Zendo. It's a lot more pinky peach, and this one is definitely a lot more golden, shifting, almost green shades. So they're definitely not the same at all. I wanted to see how this color in Mantra in the Zendo palette compared to Willow, which Mantra is a cream to powder. This one is not. But they are very similar. They're two different finishes, but they are identical. Identical. Just if you liked the shade in Zendo but didn't like the formula because it's a cream to powder, you might like this one because this one's a complete matte. And then if we do Zell and Flax, Zell, Flax, oh, that's another one. Oh, let me see. Again, Zell feels like a cream to powder and Flex is just a straight matte, but they are almost identical. Just that Zell might be a little bit darker, but yeah, almost identical. That's fascinating to me. And they're both different formulas again. Anything else? I think that might be it, you guys. I think that might be it for this one, but I did want to share that with you guys because I know a few of you wanted to see that, so here you go. All right, you guys, so these are all the palettes that I have for you guys today. I know there was a few more that you had mentioned. The Natasha Denona gold one, I feel like it would be a little bit too gold for this one. This one's a lot more murky, more grungy, more of a mixture of shades, and not necessarily just like the gold palette. So if you were thinking of the gold palette, I don't think it would be identical. I don't think that you would find very similar shades. It's a whole different vibe in that palette. So I don't know if I would compare both of those and see that there's a lot of similarities to it. I do like this one. These are the ones that I had in my collection that I felt like were the closest. You can pull things out. So I want to make that clear. If you want to dupe this, you can probably find this green in a different palette, this brown in another palette. You could probably pull all these shadows within maybe the 15 palettes that you may have. But duping the vibes as a palette as a whole, these are the closest ones that I could find in my collection that I feel like would be that grungy green safari looking kind of palette. This is beautiful. I really do like it, and I cannot wait to put it on my eyes. This is the first time I ever touched it, played around with it, maneuvered with it, so I haven't put it on my eyes just yet, but I will be doing that very soon and doing looks on my channel with it because I love this. You guys know my favorite color is green. Any color green. I don't care what color green. So this just pulls at my heartstrings, and for it being my very first palette purchase, I think this is the best thing that I could have purchased. I love it. I really, really do love it. Nomad just recently came out with a palette that's very similar to this. I do not own it, and I'm not intending on purchasing it. But that could be a very similar dupe to this. It all depends on what formula you like. It all comes down to formula and what works on your eyes. If you find something that works for you and you get that same vibe, go for it. If you like this, go for it. If you don't like it, that's okay too. I know that this is an expensive palette, and nowadays with how life is and how expensive it is, I get it. So I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what to look for in your collection, so then you can see what you can dupe with whatever you have with this palette. So that's all that I have for you guys today. Everything will be in the description box. Thank you guys so much for watching and sticking around. I appreciate it. I'll catch you guys in the videos on the screen for your enjoyment. Until then, peace out.